for fans of a long-running show,
Yes.
Blue Bloods,
Oh, yeah.
the final season is coming to a close.
It is.
And we thought this would be a good time to really look into one of the later episodes of this final season, which is season 14.
14 seasons.
That's incredible.
It is a very long run for a show.
Yeah.
You know, these days.
Right.
Kind of a
unicorn.
Yeah, it is.
And this particular episode that we're diving into today is called Entitlement. Now, we have a little bit of source material here.
Yes, we do.
From CBS about this episode. And I think Entitlement is a really interesting title for an episode of Blue Bloods.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, for those of you who don't know or haven't seen it, Blue Bloods is about the Reagans.
A family.
A family.
In New York.
In New York City, who are all involved.
In law enforcement.
In law enforcement in one way or another.
Yeah, and across generations.
Across generations, exactly.
The patriarch.
The patriarch, Frank Reagan,
Commissioner.
is the police commissioner of New York.
Of New York.
And his kids and grandkids.
And their spouses.
And their spouses and so on.
Yeah.
Are all involved in law enforcement.
So it really is a deep dive into a family where, like, every aspect of their lives
It's about law enforcement.
is about law enforcement.
So what do you think when you hear the title Entitlement? What comes to mind?
Well, you know, obviously, like, thinking about the Reagans and the world that they inhabit, it does make you wonder, you know, are they going to be looking at themselves? You know, how much self-awareness will there be for their place in the world?
And what their roles are and how much power they have.
Absolutely. And how do they wield that power? You know, do they wield it fairly?
Do they think they're above the law?
Right.
All those things are kind of...
Exactly. Exactly. And the idea of entitlement, you know, are they entitled because of their name, because of their family legacy?
Right.
Or are they going to have to earn everything they get?
Right. And it sounds like, from the source material here, that the Reagans are going to be forced to confront those questions.
Oh, I think absolutely.
Because it actually says here, you know, entitlement. The episode really dives into family and justice.
Interesting.
And how those two things are intertwined.
Yeah.
And those two things are constantly intertwined on this show.
From the very beginning.
And have always been a source of conflict for the family.
Yes, definitely. Because, you know, you have the family ties and the loyalty there, but you also have a commitment to justice. And sometimes those things might be in conflict.
Yeah, and you know, it's a show that has always tackled complex issues. Very complex issues. You know, ripped from the headlines kind of stuff.
Exactly. Ripped from the headlines. Very current.
And I think entitlement, you know, just the fact that they've chosen that word as a title for one of the episodes.
In the final season.
In the final season, it seems like they're really gonna...
They're going there.
Go there.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, make a statement about society.
Yeah, I think so.
Or at least about these characters.
Right, make us think about, you know, where we stand on things.
Make us think.
And what we believe is right.
Yeah, for sure.
About power and justice and entitlement.
Now, this episode is airing on November 29th.
Oh, wow. So right before Thanksgiving.
Right before Thanksgiving.
Interesting.
And there's actually going to be a retrospective episode airing right before it.
So a look back.
A look back at the entire series.
Wow, 14 seasons?
14 seasons.
Yeah, that's a lot to look back on.
That's a lot to cover.
It is.
But I think it's going to be a great...
I think so too.
Lead into this episode.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they'll remind us of some things that have happened in the past that relate to the themes of this episode.
Yeah, or maybe even some guest stars.
Oh, that'd be fun.
From the past, you know?
Yeah.
That could be a really cool retrospective.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to that.
And then, of course, after Entitlement airs, we are just a couple episodes away
from the big finale.
For series finale.
The series finale.
So the stakes are high.
Oh, they are incredibly high.
Here.
They are.
And the source material actually says that.
Yeah.
You know, the dramatic stakes
in this episode
are really high.
That's interesting.
So what do you think?
Yeah.
What could
happen?
I mean, what kind of dramatic stakes are we talking about?
Right.
We're talking about
life or death.
Life or death.
Career-ending decisions.
Career-ending decisions. That's a good one. Big relationship changes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, what do you think is...
Oh, maybe somebody gets
happening?
Seriously hurt.
Ooh.
You know?
That would be.
Because they are cops. And they put themselves in danger all the time.
That's true.
So that's always a possibility. But yeah, I think it could be, a major decision that somebody has to make.
Yeah.
That affects their career, affects their family.
Yeah.
Something that they just can't come back from.
Right.
Some kind of...
A point of no return.
A point of no return.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what they mean by dramatic stakes.
Yeah. Or maybe it's, somebody finally decides to leave law enforcement.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or somebody decides to, take a different path.
Yeah, totally.
And
especially in the final season. You've got to wrap things up somehow.
Right. Exactly. So this could be the beginning of the end for some of these characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their time in law enforcement.
Yeah.
So another thing that the source material mentions is character development, which I think is really interesting.
Sure.
Because we've seen these characters grow and change.
So many
over 14 seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
And you always kind of wonder, are they gonna
get their due?
Are they gonna have that
satisfying conclusion, that resolution to their storyline?
Right.
And it sounds like...
It does sound like...
This episode might be a part of that.
Oh, I think so. Especially with, entitlement being the title and these themes that they're exploring. I think we're going to see some major character development.
Right. So what are some specific character storylines that you're thinking of?
So we've got Jamie, who has always struggled a little bit
with being in his father's shadow.
Right.
He's always trying to prove himself.
Right.
He wants to be seen as his own man.
Right, and not just the commissioner's son.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So I wonder if this episode will see him, finally stepping out of that shadow.
Yeah.
Maybe making a decision that really sets him apart from his father.
Right, or maybe even going against his father.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Because we've seen those conflicts before, but maybe this is one where he really has to stand his ground.
Yeah, and make his own choices.
Exactly.
What about Erin?
Oh, Erin.
She's always kind of been...
She's always been ambitious. She's a lawyer. She's always wanted to...
Yeah.
Climb the ladder in the DA's office.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this episode will see her, maybe making a decision about her future. Is she going to run for office? Ooh. Is she going to stay in the DA's office?
She's going to leave.
Or is she going to leave entirely
and do something completely different?
Exactly. And the idea of entitlement really plays into that.
Yeah. Does she feel entitled?
Does she feel entitled to a certain position? Or is she going to have to earn it?
Right.
And I think that's a really interesting question for her character.
Yeah.
Especially as a woman in a male-dominated field.
Right.
She's already had to fight for everything she's gotten.
So they had to work harder.
So I think this episode could really explore those themes.
And what about Danny?
Danny.
He's always been...
our hothead.
The one who kind of bends the rules.
Sometimes he gets the job done, but he does things his own way. So do you think this episode will...
Maybe he'll finally...
We'll see him face consequences...
of his actions.
For his action. Maybe he'll finally have to...
Answer for something.
That
he's done. Or maybe he'll finally learn a lesson. About, doing things the right way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there are a lot of possibilities here.
Absolutely.
For character development.
And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they wrap things up. For these characters that we've come to know and love over so many years.
And, of course, we can't forget about Frank.
The patriarch.
It's
Frank Reagan.
He's the moral compass of the show.
He is.
He's always trying to do what's right.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's unpopular.
Yeah. So I'm really curious to see...
Me too.
How this episode... will challenge him.
Yeah.
And his beliefs.
His beliefs about justice.
And about entitlement.
And about his own family.
Right.
Because he's the head of the family, but he's also the head of the police department.
Right. So he's got to balance
those two roles. And I think that's always been a source of tension for him. So I think this episode could really explore that.
Yeah. And maybe...
Why not have to make a decision? That puts those two roles at odds.
Right.
Maybe he has to choose...
Between his family
and his job.
or between...
between what's right
what's right,
and what's easy.
Yeah, and that's a tough
decision
to make.
It is.
So yeah, I think
lots of possibilities.
I think this episode
Yeah.
has the potential to be
very powerful.
Really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And really, really dramatic.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's exciting.
It is.
To see a show like this
after so long.
Still going strong.
Yeah.
After 14 seasons.
And still tackling these issues.
And still tackling these really important issues.
Yeah, and not shying away from anything.
And I think that's what makes it so compelling.
I agree.
To watch.
I agree.
And, you know, to remind everyone,
yes,
Blue Bloods is on CBS.
Yeah, every Friday night?
Every Friday night.
Yeah.
And you can also stream it.
On Paramount Plus.
On Paramount Plus.
So if you've missed any episodes,
yeah,
you can catch up there.
You can catch up.
But I think this final season
yeah,
is going to be one to watch.
It's going to be one to watch.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So
if you're a fan,
yeah,
make sure you tune in.
Tune in.
On November 29th.
November 29th.
For Entitlement.
Entitlement.
And then let us know.
Yeah, we want to hear
what you think
about
the episode, about how they handle
the themes of entitlement and justice,
and about how the characters.
Yeah, what happens to them?
Yeah.
It's gonna be good.
I think it's gonna be really good.
I think so.
So yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
For this deep dive. Into Blue Bloods. And we'll see you next time.
For another deep dive.